Welcome back to the Michigan Business Beat, brought to you on the Michigan Business Network. We're at Mackinac, and we are at the Grand Hotel, as a matter of fact. It is the annual policy conference put on by the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we have with us Kathryn Snorrason. And Kathryn, you're the new mobility czar. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the title is Interim Chief Mobility Officer, so leading the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification for the state of Michigan. So we're trying to create a stronger state economy, but also look at the needs of Michigan residents. Safer, more equitable, and environmentally conscious transportation for all.
So when they give you that interim label, does that give them time to talk you into keeping the job?
I think they're trying, but no, we are looking for the next Chief Mobility Officer, and they're coming soon. Announcement to come.
But you're doing really well, and you really enjoy this. Tell us a little bit about your job, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our job is focused on removing barriers for businesses to come to Michigan, grow, and find long-term success here, but then also meet the needs of Michigan residents as well. So we want to make sure when companies look at Michigan, they have grants so they can test and deploy, they have connections, they can build partnerships, they can find office space, and they just have no excuse to see any other place as an option to grow, and Michigan is really where they can find success.
You're a concierge.
I think that's a great way to put it. We look at what the needs are for a mobility company and try to make it as easy as possible for them to grow here and meet the needs of Michigan residents.
All right, so good question, because our population is somewhat declining here. People is one of our big challenges.
Yeah.
How are we doing with recruiting companies here?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of attraction efforts we can look at as a success. So one of them is around Michigan Central in Detroit. So a lot of it's about building new tools to attract these companies, and then they attract the talent and keep the talent here in Michigan. So with Michigan Central, the city of Detroit, and the state of Michigan, just as one example, we signed an MOU to create innovation-led economic development tools, so tools that meet the needs of these smaller companies that are building up these startup companies, making sure they have the capital they need, the talent, and the access to services in space and prototyping.
Well, and the big companies draw the suppliers, so
yeah. And that helps as well. Yeah, so you're always trying to balance out, right, the big players that are already growing and looking at places to grow, and then the startups that need that different type of support.
So what was your personal course of getting here? Are you a Michigander?
I am a Michigander. Grew up in Dearborn, Michigan. All Ford Motor Company. Worked at the Henry Ford Estate. Went to the U of M Dearborn and then Ann Arbor. But then went out to Chicago to work for Deloitte and found myself in economic development in Chicago. And if you're going to do economic development anywhere, it's great to come back to your home state. So I met Trevor Paul and just been able to work with him for over 5 years in the mobility space and have loved every minute of it.
Well, I miss Trevor Paul a great deal, but I'm so glad that you're here because he couldn't sit this long.
Oh, he couldn't, yeah. He had a lot of energy and it was infectious, and all of us got to learn from that and not just talk about things, but do things for Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay,
so you get out, do you actually do the recruiting? Do you get out and speak to groups?
Yes, we just took a delegation of 18 people from Michigan to Israel last week, which was a fantastic trip to meet companies in Israel and show them how Michigan could be a landing spot for them to grow. And one success there is Electrion. They have inductive charging, so imagine you're driving and you're charging as you drive. So we got to see a vehicle driving for 100 hours and charging the whole time.
So 200 was not out of the question.
It's going to be next.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we used to work with the Michigan-Israel Business Bridge.
Yes, exactly. That's who took us on this trip.
Okay.
MIBA, yep.
Because there's not room for them to start their companies in Israel. They've got the technology, they've got the intelligence.
Yes. Yeah, and as they look at the U.S. market, we want Michigan to be the first spot for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so what's next? So what do you do to improve this, before a new person gets in or they make you stay?
Yeah, a lot of what we're doing right now is we have a state strategy called the My Future Mobility Plan that we announced at the auto show last year. It has 11 goals that we pulled together across state government, and so we're really looking at those 11 goals and making sure we're keeping the state accountable and leading in the mobility space.
So when people say mobility, they obviously figure you work with Glenn Stevens at Mich Auto and places like that, right?
Absolutely.
How are we doing with that part of the industry?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I think Michigan is so unique, and not only we have all these mobility initiatives, but we're also very collaborative, that we can have Mich Auto, OFME, and all these different groups working together to make sure Michigan is a leading force in mobility and electrification.
Yeah, so is the fact that we've built cars here for 100 and some years, is that a help?
It definitely helps, having the legacy, but now we also want the future as well.
Because California so badly wants to be Detroit.
I know they do, and we're going to keep the title. Yeah.
All right, so you're going to be be around the next few. What is the intention of them to name a permanent?
Yeah, they're in the final rounds for interviews, so hopefully over the next few months we'll have an announcement for the Chief Mobility Officer.
Well, I'm hoping we'll have you back next year. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes.
Well, it's good to have you here. Now, when you come to this, what are you hoping to take away?
Yeah, so I'm actually meeting with a lot of legislators looking at the budget that's being passed and the dollars from the state that are going toward mobility and electrification. We have federal dollars coming as well, so looking at those complementing each other and keeping us in a leading position. Yeah.
Okay, budget's always a big deal.
Yes.
This is not a bad year to look at the budget, however.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's great to have support from legislators in this space.
All right, so we got about 30 seconds. Working with infrastructure, roads, etc. Are we getting ready for the next generation?
Yes, so it's not just, when we talk about mobility, it's not just about the vehicle, it's also about the infrastructure as well, your surroundings, making sure your car is connected to the infrastructure and there's that two-way communication. And all of that is to enhance safety features, right? So a lot of people look at, these autonomous features, making it easier for them to drive, but it's also enhancing the safety as well. So it's great to work with our partners over at MDOT and CAVNU to look at that infrastructure and safety piece for the state.
Well, Kathryn Snorrason, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for being the mobility czar.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you so much. Yep.
She's got to go now. She's on the move, right? We are at the policy conference up at Mackinac Island for the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce. You're watching the Michigan Business Beat on the Michigan Business Network. I'm Chris Holman.